Hello, greetings to everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all from wherever you are. My name is Hindolo Pokawa. I'm the founder and the executive director for Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy. It's a lovely day, and I must say thank you, and I'm so excited that we are all here to talk about black sustainability, engagement conversation during this Black Sustainability Conference. When I was invited to talk about what Black sustainability is all about and what I can contribute, or let me share a little bit about the work that I'm doing from Sierra Leone in West Africa, I really felt the need to start from sharing with you all a process that we have started, but also coming from the life experience of what I've been able to go through and on what led me to be able to actually start doing what I'm doing right now. So it's gonna be a good ride. Be patient with me, and I just want to first of all give a big thanks of an applaud to the Black Sustainability Conference team for pulling this together, for really thinking in a very broad way what it means when we talk about sustainability in the 21st century that affects the black community, communities of color, communities that are being challenged on a regular basis. I apologize for the quality of my video. I could not do any much better than what it is now. I'm sorry about that, but I hope the message will resonate with all of you, and that is something that I hope you guys will be able to take away. So I'm gonna be talking about the relationship between ecology and sustainability issues when you think about the environmental relationship to how the black community needs to embrace, and we've been embracing it in order for us to be able to survive. What does that mean? And how ecology plays a critical role in our thinking in talking about black empowerment, in talking about black developmental issues, in combating and addressing the challenges of the relationship between communities of color and the environment, and what that means. So again, thank you. So like I said, my name is Hindolo Pokawa. I'm the founder and the executive director for a small non-profit organization called Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy. And we are in Sierra Leone, and we are working with local communities. Sierra Leone is the west coast of Africa, and hopefully you'll be able to see this through the presentation as well. Sierra Leone is in the west coast of Africa, and it's a small community that has a population of about 7 million people. Now, I live in Minnesota, and I do go to Sierra Leone 2 or 3 times a year, working with communities there. And eventually, my hope is to be able to reside back in Sierra Leone on the continent and working with the indigenous communities on that side. The Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy works in partnership with communities to build the foundation of citizens of all ages to enable them to engage in deliberative democratic processes that allows for them to rethink and reimagine the institutional relationships, the individual relationships, the personal relationships, the relationships that they have with the land, the ecology that feeds them, that develops their own nourishment, it provides their nourishment and what have you. So that is what really we are set up to do. And we are doing this in 3 different ways. One of it, the ways we are doing this is through what I have called the question which is centered around permaculture. That when we think about Black sustainability today, it all comes down to the issue of land. It comes down to the issue of resources. It comes down to the issue of collective engagement that is gonna allow us to utilize our own resources, mobilize our own cooperative economic systems that is going to allow us to be creative, to empower ourselves, and to be able to, come up with ways for us to survive. And this cannot be done in isolation at all. We need allies. We are going to need allies. We are going to need people who are not of Black descendant communities to be partners, but be partners in a genuine way, partners in a way that is more clearer than it can ever be before. So we are more engaged in looking at land, looking at the ecology, looking at sustainability, that we have to take the leadership role, be in the forefront to engage in our own ecological regenerative processes that can enable us to control our own resources. So land is the first framework. And I raise this point up front of this conversation I'm having with all of you right now, because one needs to understand the historical context that land has played in Africa and in the Americas, or in any other community where you will find a Black population. What is the role of land, and how the sustainability of our survival really boils down to us being able to have access to control our own land and our own resources. So Sierra Leone was founded back in 1462. We went through, 1808, we became a British Crown colony, and then we kept moving on. Of course, prior to that, we had the slave trade, which we all know, the legacy of that and the horrific impact of some of those. In 1961, we gained independence, and we were able to quickly adopt the principles of democratic aspirations, which basically quickly fell apart, and that was basically, led to a series of military coups. And of course, the most important thing that you will always hear when you talk about Sierra Leone is the Civil War. Where we had the Civil War, we had Ebola crisis, and then of course we had the mudslide that happened last year. So there is a historical context that really explains the question of land, and how land has been this factor, that has crippled our sustainability, and we are fast and quickly losing it, as we probably know, to all this idea of land grabbing processes that are taking place. The Chinese, community showing up, and they are, in a very forceful way. We are having another second wave of colonialism, which we must be able to keep an eye out for. But you have Sierra Leone, which has a 45% life expectancy. The life expectancy in Sierra Leone is about 45 years of age. Literacy rate is about 37%. And you have 40% urbanization processes that basically leads to so many movement that is leaving the rural areas and coming into the urban communities. That in itself speaks a lot. And we must be able to begin to tackle some of those issues. Why do I raise all of this? And what does this have anything to do with the Black sustainability concept and the empowerment, the very foundation of our survivability lies in land question, relationship building, resource question, the extractive, exploitative relationship that exists. Because when you look at the ecosystem of trauma, which the Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy has cleverly articulated, it has a lot to do with a pattern of colonial processes that has occurred over the years. And those colonial processes has essentially boiled down to what I would call the extractive and the exploitative relationships. These extractive relationships have really created a way for, when you talk about Sierra Leone, you really talk about just the extractive aspect. So it's about the diamonds, the golds, and minerals, and whatever. So people who are coming to a country like Sierra Leone, the Sierra Leoneans themselves, Africa as a whole in general, it's really about the extractive. And of course, we have the exploitative relationships. The exploitative relationships try to address, issues that basically try to get out. You exploiting labor at the expense of the masses, where you are not able to actually give anything back. How has that manifested itself? It has manifested itself through colonial rule, enslavement, transnational industry systems, international development aid, and of course the international non-governmental organization. Issa Shivji from Tanzania has cleverly argued the NGOization of Africa has really created a fallacy for most governments to be able to articulate their own responsibilities to their citizens. And we Africans need to begin to understand that. Black people need to begin to understand that. That does not only apply to the Africans on the continent, it applies to every black population you can think about all over the world. We must be able to begin to articulate these relationships and, trying to come to save the day when it's not really in the interest of true partnerships. What have we done as Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy to tackle this? We have embraced an old philosophy of farming activities, of livelihood sustainabilities, ways and means of living off the land, which now has developed into a name called permaculture. Which is basically an idea that was coined by two Australians who studied indigenous communities around the world and concluded that, they could actually take this and make it a paradigm, make it a philosophy. And so today, permaculture is being taught in most universities. Permaculture is being taught as a way of life. Permaculture is being engaged in terms of social relationship and connections. And permaculture has three ethics: care for the earth, care for people, and care for the future. That speaks very well to this Black Sustainability Conference, ladies and gentlemen. And I would encourage you to look into permaculture philosophy and begin to ask yourselves, what role can you play, or what role can permaculture play in your life, in your community? And so with the three areas of sustainability, which basically addresses the ethics of permaculture, which is care for the earth, care for people, care for the future. There are three approaches that we hopefully want to make sure that if we're talking about the sustainability of the Black community, the sustainability of people of color from all over the world, the sustainability of the Black population in particular, we are very eager to connect the relationship of connectedness among people, and how do we deepen that, ensuring that we can allow our creativities to flow, and enabling us to identify the traumas that is holding us back as Black communities, as disenfranchised communities, as communities that have been marginalized for years and years. We have been traumatized. We have been badly wounded. How do we begin to rethink those wounds and begin to heal from those. So we're doing that through our permaculture processes, which basically is addressed through the three ethics of care for the earth, care for people, and care for the future. And what does that mean? It means we are in this current moment, in this DNA age of this 21st century. When you think about everything that is happening, of course, with the America today, the United States in particular, and when we think about the lack of democratic space that is eroding very fast, you are really challenged to think about what spaces can you create to be creative, right? And so for us, one thing that we have done with the Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy, and we have embraced the permaculture philosophy, in order for us to do that, one has to be very observant. So observation is a key aspect in permaculture design that we must be able to look at. What are those areas? Not only observing from an ecological point of view, but observing from a sociological point of view, an economic point of view, to be able to say, what is it that is not working? What is it that is not right for us? So we are able to see that, and we can then say, okay, these are the issues that we can take on. So observation is a key aspect to the work that we are doing. But we are also saying that we recognize what indigenous communities have been talking about, they have been doing for years and years, and there is a knowledge to that process and knowledge that must be recognized. So indigenous knowledge has played a key role in permaculture design to recognize that knowledges that are found within local communities, whether written or unwritten, are in fact knowledge that we can learn from, we can embrace. So most times we get to dismiss indigenous knowledge as knowledge that is not worth in any way. And this concept of our blackness and our quest for us to be able to survive and sustain ourselves can only go back to identifying those indigenous knowledge and taking those on and be able to embrace them fully. As we do that, we are not going to forget about the scientific knowledge that permaculture comes with, and it has beautifully articulated what those scientific knowledge processes can be. That, when we talk about hand washing, is not something, that is Western or not. No, it's about hygiene. It's basic hygiene. So we know that, okay, it's important to wash hands. We have the proven record for it. We know that if you don't wash your hands, you can get bacteria, you can get viruses, you can get so many things. So those scientific knowledge in terms of our own survivability and what have you is also very critical in the work that we are doing. So permaculture has about 7 domains. And I'm saying all of this because if the Black sustainability question has to be addressed, and if we all have to embrace what Black sustainability means, in a conference like this, trying to address the quest for Black sustainability, it means us looking deep into what are the roles that we as communities represented by our Black interest and represented by other people who also clearly see the marginalization of the Black population, and yet they want to be an ally, they want to be partners, true partners, and not just lip service partners that truly mean something for us. Then we are more than willing to say, okay, how do we begin to embrace those partners? How do we begin to really identify those mechanisms to be able to get ourselves out of the kinds of poverty or the kinds of lack of opportunities that we have found ourselves? I am very much convinced that over the years, what has happened in several countries across the world, from the Arab Springs to different uprisings to, Africa in itself has basically gone through that wave. Therefore, the Black sustainability question, when you think about it, like I started, has a lot to do with land. It has a lot to do with our own sheer determination, the willingness, the having the political will to be able to address some of those challenges. But we are saying that coming out of that experience is to embrace a philosophy called permaculture. Permaculture has 7 domains, and those domains have really informed the Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy. So what do we do in a grand scheme of things? To give you a very clear, vivid example, the Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy, we are building schools. We are building the first village preschool in Sierra Leone, and we are building it on 20 acres of permaculture farm. Permaculture, I will loosely define, is a process that, it's a paradigm that produces no waste. A paradigm that produces no waste. That's the shortest, simplest definition I can give you. It has a much more deeper, complex definition. But because this paradigm produces no waste, it has 7 domains, and one must be able to look at all those domains to say, okay, how does land and nature embraces the question of Black sustainability? How does issues of community tenure, land governance system embraces sustainability question for the Black population? How does education and culture, health and spirituality, built environment, economics and finance, technology and tools, how do all of those help us to be able to be sustainable as Black people? This is a question we must be able to begin to wrestle with. We must wrestle with this question. Because if we don't, then what is happening is that we are not going to be able to begin to build ourselves and create the relationship among ourselves as individuals. Our families are going to break apart because we do not have the capacity to identify what it means to be Black, and how are we going to be able to sustain our Blackness within the context of survivability. It means we are not going to be able to tackle those institutions that are oppressing us. It means we are not going to be able to create new institutions that we can lead and be advocates for those institutions to better serve our needs. It means that the environment upon which we depend on is, we are not going to be in relationship with the land. So when you think about all of the oppressions and things that basically have left Black communities out and what have you, we are really talking about how do we begin to revive ourselves? How do we begin to talk new language and new ways of thinking about things? So for the Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy, we are building a 3-tier approach. Building village preschool programs where we have 215 children for the first preschool in Sierra Leone. First village preschool. There are preschools in the country. They are in the cities. They are mostly private and mostly expensive. What we have attempted to do, and we have succeeded in doing it, is building the first village preschool program that has 215 children. Our teachers are from the local communities. We do not bring in any teachers from anywhere. We train our teachers. These are young boys and girls who have finished high school, don't have anywhere to go, stuck in the village, and we have gathered all of them. We've sent them to college. They will come back and then serve and continue the call to civic duty, to civic engagement. And that is a positive step to our Black sustainability question. And we must be able to begin to embrace such a philosophy. We have also embarked on a permaculture farm where we are replanting trees. We are engaging in food production. The food itself is organic, and so we feed the kids 2 meals a day. Directly food from the farm that is directly feeding the children. So a permaculture farm that really looks at how do we provide opportunity to produce more tomatoes and onions that we eat. You and I you can agree with me that, most kids today don't even know how tomato is grown, how onions are grown. They eat it, they have no idea how it is grown. What goes into it, they have no idea. So my 3-year-old came home one day. She's now 7 years of age. She came home one day and she told me, "Dad, I know why the leaf is green." I'm like, "Why? Why is the leaf green?" And she was like, "The leaf is green because of photosynthesis." Like, you were taught that in school today? And she said, yes. I said, wow. And that basically gave me the opening. The light bulbs went off, and I was able to go back to Sierra Leone to start the first village preschool program. That story has resonated with me for all these years. And this is our third year starting the Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy, our second year running the school. But it means that for us to be able to sustain the question of black survivability, we must be able to articulate some of the issues that are holding us back. From democratic governance issues where communities are not participating in democratic decision-making processes, to having the resources and being creative to reduce our footprint, carbon print on this planet, on this earth. And so our permaculture practice, our permaculture training has allowed us to begin to look at the maximization of natural resources so that we cannot exhaust everything that we have. And this is a call to action point that I invite all of you. Our third framework that we have embraced with the Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy to really address the question of black sustainability is our social enterprises, where we are currently embarking on 8 social enterprises to start, where the women who walk a mile or two every day carrying their children to the farm can then have an opportunity to drop their child in the preschool while they go about engaging in tie-and-dye, tailoring, carpentry, welding, etc., to be able to make sure that they can have an alternative income generation just in case if the farm yield does not produce good seeds this year. Because you get a seed that is already fertilized, you buy more fertilizer, you already initially got a loan to get the fertilizer, the seed does not do well, you are stuck with the loan and you are not able to pay back the loan because you did not get good yield this year. Permaculture is an opportunity for us to reverse that trend. We are engaging in so much slash and burn method system that is not sustainable. Permaculture allows us to be able to think about the ecology and sustainability for the survivability of our black people. And so I want to leave you imagining the possibilities of what it means when an author like Vandana Shiva from India have argued that we human beings have looked at ourselves that the earth is its own thing, the environment is its own thing, and we human beings are our own thing. We are doing things completely different from the earth, from the way how the earth wants us to do things. We have removed ourselves. We see the earth, it's right there, and we are right here. We have no relationship with the earth because we think the earth is something to be used and dumped. I want you to think about this. As you engage and process and converse with so many people throughout this Black Sustainability Conference, I want you to think about what it means to be engaged with the earth, what it means to be outdoor and engaging with the environment, and what it means to have a new generation of thinkers who can begin to appreciate the environment as what it is. Thank you. Thank you.